Bore da pawb, good morning everyone. I hope everyone can hear me okay, and thank you so much for coming to Size of Wales's deforestation-free public sector procurement toolkit. If people could just type in the message to let me know you can hear me, that would be fantastic. Oh, good. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. My name is Barbara Davis-Quine, and I'm Deputy Director at Size of Wales. And thank you so much for being here today to celebrate the launch of our new and improved deforestation-free public procurement toolkit. It's quite ironic, really, that we're here today in a week or weeks of heat wave, and we know that tropical forests are nature's cooling system, nature's best way of cooling the planet. But we are losing tropical forests at a devastating rate. So it's now more important than ever for us all to come together to take action to protect tropical forests. And we're really pleased that we've been able to do this event and produce this toolkit thanks to funding from the SIPS Foundation, who've been key supporters of our work on public procurement. So today we're going to be talking about how you can achieve your goal as an organisation, as a public body, to be globally responsible and to make sure that our supply chains are deforestation free. We've got some fantastic examples as well of public bodies already leading the way, taking action from Monmouthshire and Caerphilly. So we are going to be joined as well by Sue Hurrell from the Welsh Government, who's been key in all this work, Derek Walker, Future Generations Commissioner, Hazel Clatworthy from Monmouthshire County Council, Hayley Jones, Shelley Toms, Heather Richardson, and Kate Davis from Caerphilly County Borough Council, Amy Roach from Greener by Default, and Angie Kirby and Scout Astley Jones from Size of Wales. So next slide, please. So just briefly, who is Size of Wales? Well, we are a Welsh climate change charity that helps protect tropical forests the size of Wales. If you didn't know how big Wales is 2 million hectares. So we work with Indigenous and local communities to protect tropical forests like the Amazon, like the Congo Basin, and we also restore tropical forests by planting millions of trees hand in hand with local communities. And we're also really passionate about our work here in Wales, where we aim to educate and inspire young people to take climate action. And in the photo, you can see there some of our amazing pupils that we've worked with from Bryn Teg and Litchard Primary School that took their campaign straight to decision makers. And fundamentally, we want Wales to become a deforestation-free nation and do everything in its power to ensure that we are not contributing to tropical deforestation thousands of miles away and are being globally responsible. So those are our three pillars of work. We believe passionately that we can play our part here in Wales and take action, and that every little change can make a difference to protect people and the planet. So we're going to hear firstly from Angie Kirby, our policy manager at Size of Wales, and she's going to give an overview of why tropical forests are important and our Deforestation Free Nation campaign and the work we've done so far with public bodies. Over to you, Angie.
Diolch, Barbara. Bore da pawb. Good morning, everybody. So firstly, let's take a look at why protecting tropical forests and habitats is so important. So firstly, climate regulation. Tropical forests are carbon sinks, and that's because in the tropics, trees grow incredibly quickly, absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it both within the trees, within the wood, the barks, the leaves, and below ground in the soil. So if protected, tropical forests are capable of capturing and storing 1/3 of the carbon emissions we need to lock away by 2030. Number two, air and water purification. So these are just two of the ecosystem services that tropical forests provide. Ecosystem services are often referred to as gifts by Indigenous peoples, which I think is a much more beautiful way of looking at it. And So one example is the Atlantic forest in Brazil, which provides over 60% of Brazil's fresh drinking water and is rich with biodiversity. And that's despite the fact that only 10% of this incredible precious habitat remains. And that's due to urban expansion and deforestation for products such as soy, which is mainly used to feed livestock. Tropical forests are also home to around 50 million people, and we know that indigenous peoples are the best guardians of the world's forests. Forests protected by indigenous peoples contain more carbon and more biodiversity than those unprotected. So in our work to protect forests, it's really critical that we also support indigenous peoples and local forest communities. Biodiversity. So tropical forests contain around 50% of terrestrial plant and animal species, and that's only on 6% of land. If you include aquatic life within that, it jumps to around 80%. They also provide us with shelter, food, and medicine. In terms of medicine, for example, 25% of Western medicines come from plants found in tropical forests. And that includes 75% of medicines with anti-cancer characteristics. One of these is the Madagascan periwinkle, which has helped to increase the chance of surviving childhood leukemia from 10% to 90%, which is just incredible. And this plant is currently at risk from extinction in its native habitat. So, you know, this is millions of years of evolution. We can't just, if we lose it, it's gone. We never know what we've lost. It's really critical to protect these habitats. Tropical forests also reduce the risk of zoonotic disease, jumping the species barrier into human populations. So 75% of emerging infectious diseases are zoonotic. As we know from COVID, this means being spread from animals to humans. And rising rates of deforestation are leading to more frequent interactions between humans and wildlife, particularly through agricultural activity. So since the 40s, nearly 50% of zoonotic diseases that have emerged have been directly linked to agriculture, including the deadly Ebola and Nipah viruses. Forests create cloud cover, which helps reflect and to regulate the temperature of the planet. In contrast, deforested land absorbs more solar radiation, increasing global temperatures. The Amazon rainforest helps to regulate the Gulf Stream, which means that we in the UK benefit from a temperate climate, which means we can grow food throughout the year. And if the Gulf Stream would collapse, it would have serious consequences for UK food security and more. Human connection to nature. So tropical forests provide us with culture, inspiration, spirituality. They are critical habitats that provide us with so much more than that which is scientifically measurable. They not only make life viable on our planet, they help it to thrive, and their protection is essential to our survival. And finally, in relation specifically to the UK, if that isn't enough, recently the UK government published a national security assessment which stated that biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation are now recognised as top-tier risks to our security, prosperity and resilience in the UK. So these are not just simply concerns raised by environmental campaigners. These are the conclusions reached by national security professionals whose job it is to assess the threats facing our country. They warn that the destruction of critical ecosystem Amazon can undermine food security, increase food prices, increase economic instability, drive displacement, and intensify climate-related risks across the globe. This clearly demonstrates why we really need to protect these incredible habitats. Okay, diolch for switching slides. This is why we at Size of Wales, with our partners at WWF Cymru, are working to make Wales a deforestation-free nation, or DFN for short. DFN is a solutions-focused campaign which aims to help Wales reduce its land footprint overseas in relation to the key forest risk commodities. These include beef from South America, which is the #1 driver of deforestation globally, soy, as I said, which is mostly fed to livestock here in Wales. In fact, 91% of our soy imports are fed directly to livestock, with poultry consuming more than half. Palm oil, coffee, cacao, and timber, paper, and pulp, as well as a few other non-food commodities. So the campaign supports Wales to respond to the climate and nature crisis, standing in solidarity with Indigenous peoples and forest communities on the front line of deforestation and climate change. Next slide, please. Diolch. Okay, so this is just a brief overview of some of our deforestation-free public procurement work. So in 2025, the Future Generations Commissioner, Derek Walker, recommended that the Welsh public sector become deforestation-free by 2028, ensuring supply chains do not contribute to global deforestation, habitat loss, or human rights violations, including child labour and the abuse of Indigenous peoples' rights. We know many public bodies have responded to and accepted this recommendation, and we are working with a number of public bodies to help them understand how to respond through learning and collaboration, auditing and identifying risk in the supply chains, and taking meaningful action to reduce their tropical forest footprint overseas. So some of this work includes the Welsh Public Sector Collaborative Food Group Framework. So this work started a few years ago, quite early in the campaign, where we worked with Caerphilly County Borough Council to include mandatory deforestation-free criteria into the food framework, which is accessed by a number of public bodies, 21 in fact, and includes 22 suppliers, 19 of whom are Welsh businesses. So the idea was to get this criteria into the contracts very early on. Next, the CIPS Chartered Institute in Procurement and Supply Foundation have funded a 2-year deforestation-free procurement project. So we're now in year 2. And this was the next step in the work with Caerphilly Council, which was to work with those suppliers and public bodies on the framework to help them learn about and be able to identify deforestation risks in the supply chains and take action to reduce risk, including supplier engagement, investigating their feed supply chains, for example, if they're a meat producer or seller, and just looking at those key forest risk commodities that are popping up in those supply chains. We formed an alliance in terms of the third point here, the Social Partnerships and Public Procurement Act. So we formed an alliance with a number of other NGOs to incorporate global responsibility and deforestation-free criteria into the statutory guidance for the Act. And finally, our deforestation-free champion councils work. So Monmouthshire County Council became the first council to become a deforestation-free champion, and most recently, Caerphilly County Borough Council have become the second. This happened in the last couple of weeks, and they both voted unanimously to become deforestation-free champion councils. So they are we're helping them to look at the risk and make an action plan of where they can make changes. So other public bodies and organisations have already started assessing their forest risk as well. And so this is just a bit of an overview of some of the work that we've been doing with the public sector. And it's really exciting. And now we've got 2 councils. Now we've just got the rest of Wales to go before we make all councils in Wales deforestation-free champion councils. And it's one more step towards Wales becoming a deforestation-free nation. Okay, diolch yn fawr iawn. I'm going to hand over to Scout now to talk about the toolkit. Diolch.
Thanks, Angie. I'm Scout. I'm the Advocacy and Outreach Officer at Size of Wales, and I've been working with Angie and the rest of the team to redevelop this deforestation-free public procurement toolkit. And this toolkit is a practical guide to help Welsh public bodies, whether it be a council, health board, schools, or any other public bodies, to ensure that the products and commodities they buy don't drive tropical deforestation, habitat destruction, and abuse of Indigenous and local peoples overseas. So this is aimed at anyone within a public body who might sort of have a leadership or strategic role, or work within the sort of climate and nature or sustainability areas of the organisation, procurement practitioners, people who are buying and procuring products and working with suppliers, anyone who raises a purchase order, but also importantly, employees who are responsible for procuring financial services such as pensions and investments, because those can also drive forest risk overseas through the products they invest in. So the toolkit contains a lot. It's quite comprehensive, but I'm just going to go through some of the key parts of it. So first of all, it introduces Size of Wales and then the importance of tropical forests in a bit more detail, as well as sort of the relationship between tropical forests and climate change, and the different risks that Angie's already outlined, and a sort of snapshot of where we are now in terms of tropical deforestation, climate and biodiversity loss, and the legislative and statutory requirements that we as Welsh and in UK governments have for tackling those issues. We also have sort of information on why public bodies should act. So from a statutory or legislative point of view, we link a lot of the benefits of deforestation-free procurement with some of those statutory requirements, but also outline a lot of the benefits in general to public bodies and people within those areas that a deforestation-free approach can have. We then go through some of the key forest risk commodities. So as Angie already said, like beef, soy, palm oil, coffee, cacao, but also financial investments. So what those risks are and where they occur in the world, what the sort of current state of play is of those risks, especially in relation to what we purchase and bring into Wales. And then some really easy first steps of forest-friendly actions that organisations can take to reduce risk for those specific commodities. We have an ethical certification guide, so a really quick guide of which certifications you can look for on your packaging or you can ask for from your suppliers, which can help reduce deforestation risk. And we don't just rely on certifications. There's a number of different actions within the toolkit and within the learning pathway that can help organisations reduce deforestation risk, but certifications is one of them. And this guide just gives a really easy sort of outline of why those certifications reduce risk and what to look for. And then importantly, we have stories from the front line of deforestation, which really grounds this work in the sort of real life examples of deforestation and its impact on communities, but also communities who are taking action to fight back against deforestation and come up with innovative solutions to produce products and have sustainable livelihoods whilst reducing the risk of deforestation. I'll just skip to the next slide. So within the toolkit, we contain our deforestation-free learning pathway. So this sort of mirrors our deforestation-free champion pathway that our education team delivers in schools. But it's basically a pathway that any organisation, be it a public body or a business, can follow to reduce the risk of tropical deforestation within their supply chains. And on this pathway, anyone can join the pathway and no one has to do every single step of the pathway, and nor does everyone have to commit to being a deforestation-free champion. Any organisation or individual can do any parts of the steps on the pathway and will help them reduce deforestation risk. So within the toolkit, we go through each step of the pathway. We include examples of where organisations have been delivering, particularly on that specific step, and also examples of what organisations can do. The toolkit includes a number of practical resources in English and Welsh that you can use to reflect on and audit and assess your deforestation risk within your supply chains. So we've got an audit tool, a reflection tool. Again, you don't have to use them, but they're just guides that can help you get started in terms of documenting risk and then making actions and plans to reduce risk. And then we also have the Deforestation-Free Champion Charter and Action Plan, a template to use if you would like to become a deforestation-free champion. This charter is something that you commit to and sign up to, and then you can develop your action plan as suits your organisation. And that's really just a guide to help you move through the steps of becoming a deforestation-free champion. And as we're going to hear some of the examples today, the toolkit includes some best practice case studies of organisations who are reducing deforestation risk within their organisation, whether it be intentionally sort of going out to become deforestation free, or as a co-benefit or as a result of other actions. So actually, deforestation free actions in themselves can deliver lots of co-benefits for public bodies, but also public bodies might have specific goals which are sort of hierarchical, and they might go and sort of have an aim for one thing, and it might in itself be reducing deforestation risk. And we really want to platform and show example of those, because we know that all different public bodies and organisations have different goals and different people who they're serving, and that a deforestation-free approach can fit within that. And we sort of hope that this toolkit can be flexible to fit with anyone's needs. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Barbara now to introduce the next speakers.
Thanks, Scouts and Angie, for that really useful overview of the toolkit. We will also be sending out the toolkit to everyone that has signed up for the event, and it will be available on our website as well. So you'll be able to see that at the end. We know that obviously public procurement, there's lots of legislation in Wales that support public bodies to deliver against multiple statutory requirements. And there are particularly two pieces of legislation that are related to the ambition of becoming a deforestation-free Wales, a deforestation-free nation. That public bodies will already be very aware of, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Act. And we're really pleased to have Sue Hurrell here, who was instrumental in bringing about the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Act and the statutory guidance that goes alongside it, that does include a lot of references to deforestation-free, fair trade, fair work, and other sustainability goals. So we're really pleased that Sue can be here today to talk about how that legislation will bring to life, really, these kind of issues such as deforestation-free and sustainability. So, Sue, thank you so much for attending, and over to you.
Great, it's good to be here. Do you want to take the slides down, and then I probably will appear a little bit larger on the screen for everybody if I'm speaking, hopefully. Yeah, so thank you very much for inviting me to talk today. And I also want to extend my thanks to Size of Wales and to you in particular, Barbara, for working so hard with the other group of non-government organisations to make sure that the legislation and all the guidance and material would paid as much attention to the globally responsible Wales goal as possible. That was the plan. That was agreed by the minister at the time when we were working on the bill itself before it came into an act, and then continued as we worked on all the guidance and the regulations. So the law actually came into received royal assent, so it was passed into law in 2023, but only came into force a couple of years later. The reason being was just the complexity of working on this piece of law alongside the UK's reforming of procurement rules at the same time, and there just being a set number of us in Wales who are kind of working on all of it together. So it just took a while. But it's now fully enforced, and actually I've moved on now to another role, still connected actually, but I'm now head of anti-slavery and ethical supply chains, with a focus more on people in supply chains. But of course, people and planet are always very closely linked. So I haven't gone far away, and I'm still very interested in how this work plays out, and I've still got an interest in it from my job as well. But the responsibility for kind of implementing the new procurement law and supporting public bodies to do that lies now with colleagues in procurement and commercial. So that'd be, for those of you who know people, it's kind of Natalie Noble when it comes to the actual legislation and interpreting it, and then Jane Williams and her team looking at it from a policy point of view. So those are the people to be in touch with. So yeah, the purpose of this, those socially responsible procurement duties, which went into a Social Partnership Act, was to focus attention on the wider outcomes of the £10 billion we spend every year in Wales. Around a third of that money is actually spent on construction-related procurement as well. And of course, materials and timber, etc., are a huge proportion of that as well. So that's an important element. And actually, food procurement, as we've already heard mentioned, is a fairly, important chunk of that overall expenditure as well. I'm just going to shut my door. I don't know if you can hear a piano playing in the background. If you can't, that's fine. But my son is doing some practice.
You can't hear anything, Sue.
It's bothering me a little, so I'm just going to close my door so I can do. That's good. The microphones are always quite directional, which helps, doesn't it, with this? not hearing the background noise. So yes, the socially responsible procurement duties do kind of nothing more or less than put some processes around existing requirements under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So the only thing that actually changed from a policy point of view was the definition of fair work, or fair work replacing the words for decent work in the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. There's no fundamental change in policy under this legislation, but there was a load of additional duties, if you like, that public bodies needed to apply. The legislation in Wales can only apply to the public sector, and we can't apply legislation directly to business in Wales. All that legislation is reserved to the UK government. So we're on a bit of a tightrope really with this law. What could we do to use our spending power, if you like, in Wales to make changes to things which are formally the responsibility of UK government, if you see what I mean? So employment law, same thing. That's the responsibility of the UK government. So it's a tricky balancing act, and we can never go as far as we want to legislate in Wales. That might change, of course, with the Plaid Cymru government, how they negotiate that balance between what has to be done in Westminster and what has to be done in Wales. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But so in terms of this topic that we're talking about today, the two well-being, essentially, this is about ensuring that all of those well-being goals and those ways of working in the Wellbeing Act are applied through the way that we spend our money and the way we do our procurement. And the two that we're particularly interested in, I think, goals-wise, are, of course, globally responsible Wales, but also resilient Wales. We've heard, haven't we, in the opening slides, how essential thinking about reducing deforestation is to just our resilience across the world, which includes in Wales. So just to describe briefly what this law requires. So fundamentally, at the top end, it requires that whenever any money is spent, even low value procurements, even spending any public money, you can no longer just think in terms of optimizing time, cost and quality, which is obviously the way whenever you buy anything, in fact, you do that without thinking about it. We want it. When do we want it? How much are we prepared to pay? And how much are we flex? What the quality is that we want? That's what we do in the procurement. It's what we do as individuals. But now in the public sector, you've got to optimize time, cost, quality, environmental, social, economic, and cultural well-being. All of those things together. So 7 things to think about, and not just time, cost, and the actual quality of the outcome. The example I often give is if you go to the supermarket and you want to buy some apples. You could purely base it on, how quickly I can get the apples, drive down to the supermarket, or do I get them online? Time. What do they look like? Are they tasty? Do I actually like these apples? And what's the price? But you could also worry about whether they're organic. You could worry about where they've been flown in from around the world. You could worry about fair trade, which kind of comes in with organic as well. So the way that the processes, if you like, for getting these apples to you. And that's really what we're asking the public sector to do, is to think more about what it is you're buying. Years ago, I used to say, if only we could legislate in Wales for procurement for people to have a think. It sounds a bit sort of a weird thing to say, maybe a bit patronising. I don't mean it that way, but actually requiring that step up front of thinking, what are the wider impacts of this legislation, of this procurement that we're doing? And so essentially that is what is at the top end of this piece of legislation. If you want to read the Act, unlike a lot of UK legislation, which I'm trying to get my head around at the moment, it's actually written in a fairly straightforward way. You can read it and understand what it is that we're trying to achieve with the socially responsible procurement duties. Part 3 of the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Act, you can find it online. So having put that framework in place, the next thing is for all of the duty is for all larger procurements, which are ones above the threshold we have to advertise things, around about £130,000 and 2 million for construction. Then you have to set objectives for what you're going to achieve. Now, at the moment, hopefully, all of our public bodies that are listed in Schedule 1, which isn't all of them in Wales, actually, it doesn't include universities, FE colleges or housing for complex reasons, but pretty much every other Welsh public body is on that list in Schedule 1. They should be working on setting some objectives. 6 or 7 objectives, but for somewhere between 4 and 10 objectives. And then they'll be accountable for reporting on how they've delivered those objectives. So one of the first questions is that we want to be asking, and you can, this should be all in the public domain in due course, is does this important matter, is that reflected in those objectives or in the steps that organisations will take to meet those objectives, which should be published in their procurement strategies? They've got to publish some objectives, they've got to publish a procurement strategy during the course of this financial year, hopefully within the first 6 months of it, so you've got by Christmas time. And then, so the next duty is that annually every public body has got to produce a report to explain how they've met those objectives in the procurements, the larger procurements they've done over the course of the year, if they could do more, where they may have failed to meet their objectives. So those reports, we're hoping very much they'll have a mixture of some data in there, data and metrics that may have set themselves, and also examples and stories, because my view is that, or what I've been suggesting to people is that often case studies, examples and stories speak more loudly sometimes than numbers in terms of generating ideas and getting people to think differently about stuff. So those annual reports will have to be published in the next financial year. So people start writing them in April 2027, and they'll be published over the course of that year. And then the Welsh Government then has to write its own report based on those reports in due course as well. So that's the annual reporting side. Really powerful transparency duty, something that you guys can all be working on. You can think about how to build in deforestation as part of those strategies and that reporting. And then we can all be challenging the public sector to be more progressive in these areas if they possibly can, thinking about how they can be more progressive. As well as that, there are specific duties in this legislation for construction, major construction projects. There's a set of standard clauses that have to be included in every contract above 2 million, including call-offs from framework contracts. Or if they're not included, then the organisation concerned needs to write to Welsh Government and explain why not. And they could be obliged to include the clauses. And the clauses include clauses around the environment, having putting plans in place, and the guidance around those clauses is quite detailed, and that's where you'll find some information about deforestation free procurement. One of the problems we've got is that all the guidance that links to this legislation is stored at the moment on this great. We're not very good with our websites, are we, in Welsh Government? You'll probably agree. It's just a great long list of documents, so you've got to be to know where you're looking. So hopefully that will improve at some point, and there'll be a clearer path through the different bits of guidance and information that people need. But it's all there. It's just a case of pointing people in the right direction to it, I think. The other thing is that we spent quite a lot of time working on some metrics. Now, this was introduced by the Senedd itself. They wanted some more evidence that this was having an impact. So the million-dollar question is, we spend all this money, what actual impact are we having on the business community? I mean, obviously, the duties are for public bodies, but how is that feeding through to changing practice in our suppliers? And these metrics are designed to prompt thinking again and some effort, if you like, by our suppliers. And these are a clever way of us targeting some things that we haven't got power to actually legislate for directly. So there are 11 metrics, and these are set out in regulations, and every single contract over £30,000, the supplier has got to answer 11 questions, which are yes, no answers. So one of them is, are you a real living wage employer? Are you accredited with that? Another is, have you signed up to the Code of Practice on Ethical Employment in Supply Chains, which again links into globally responsible Wales, because it talks about supply chains overseas as well. But it's mainly focusing on employment, that one. Another one is, do you offer opportunities for your employees to learn and improve their Welsh, for example? These 11 metrics have been designed to look across those 4: social, environmental, cultural and economic well-being. And there is one there about having an environmental plan in place as well, and also a carbon reduction plan. So while they are an initial kind of step, what they're doing is already prompting our supply base to think about stuff. So, for example, the Code of Practice, we've seen a massive increase in the number of organisations asking to sign up to that compared to before. Since, I mean, when I say massive, it's like a lot higher. There's about 700 organisations signed up, and the numbers are increasing rapidly since this change in the law. So hopefully that also means people are thinking about, oh, I need to put an environmental plan in place, and then make sure that I can say tick yes to that box. There's no obligation for suppliers to tick yes or no to those, but there is an obligation on public bodies to report the proportion of their suppliers that are saying yes and no, which hopefully will encourage our public bodies to encourage and support their suppliers to be saying yes to more of those questions, if you see what I mean. So it's nudge stuff, prompts and encouragement, and an intention, if you like, for everybody to be improving over time. So those are the metrics. Those came into force at the beginning of April as well, and public bodies will have to report on those again in their annual report from next April. The only other thing to say then is that these annual reports, they're not just going to kind of be published and ignored. We have also set up a subgroup of our Social Partnership Council, which meets regularly. And the purpose of that subgroup is to oversee the implementation of this piece of legislation. So they should be, the people have been appointed to that committee already, and they should be instrumental in looking at a summary of annual reports once they're published, and really overseeing how effective this legislation is being over time. And occasionally, now and again, there'll be opportunity for new people to join that committee, and that might be of interest to people on this call. We want people with experience in these sorts of areas to join that group. So really, that is what this new legislation is designed to do. It's all brilliant in theory. In practice, it needs oversight, it needs challenge. Like all pieces of public legislation, you can meet the basic requirements by doing very little. But we're hoping that public bodies will want to publish good annual reports. They won't be sort of greenwashing and whitewashing and just a load of words. The fact that we've got to put some numbers in there will focus people's minds on trying to actually deliver some real outcomes. So that's the plan anyway, and hopefully we'll begin to see this legislation really having an impact. But it does mean also that if you're keen to push your organisation to do more in this area, this piece of legislation is a really good tool for you to go to your senior managers and say, look, we've got to tell a good story at the end of this year. How about we pay attention to this? Let's get this in our objectives. Let's make sure it's mentioned in our procurement strategy. Let's make sure we're measuring some stuff around this so that we can report back on it. And this new toolkit will be really invaluable for you if you want to take that forward. I haven't yet had chance, because I've been up to my eyes in my new job for the last few weeks with some UK legislation that I've had to deal with. I've not had a chance to properly look at the toolkit yet, but it looks absolutely brilliant. And yeah, that's it really.
Thanks.
I hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful and great to see the progress made. We will be following up on, as you say, the implementation and seeing what changes are actually made, because that's at the end of the day what we hope to see. So fantastic to have that overview. We're now going to be having a video from Derek Walker, the Future Generations Commissioner for Wales. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, but has kindly recorded a few thoughts. Derek, as Angie and Scout mentioned at the beginning, included in his 5-year report a recommendation for all bodies to be deforestation free by 2028, and his organisation as an office is also signed up to becoming a deforestation free champion. So we're really pleased and thankful to the support we've been receiving from the Future Gens office for this important piece of work.
We can't hear any sound.
That's always the way, isn't it? You test it and it's fine, and then when it comes to actually doing it, it doesn't work. It always happens.
be aware that we did test it just a few moments ago, so I'm not sure why that's not working.
Might be worth reloading and starting from
Yeah.
scratch.
Borough, and thank you for inviting me to say a few words today. It's a pleasure to support the launch of Size of Wales's new deforestation-free toolkit. This is an important practical resource that supports action we need to take as a Welsh public sector to reduce the deforestation risk of the things we use and the things we buy. Because while we may be a small nation, our global footprint is not. Through the goods and services we procure, from our food to our paper, we are connected to supply chains that too often are driving deforestation overseas. And with deforestation comes biodiversity loss, climate breakdown, and profound impacts on communities around the world. That is why in my Future Generations Report 2025, I made a clear recommendation that the Welsh public sector should become deforestation free by 2028. This recommendation didn't come out of nowhere. It reflects years of growing evidence and engagement, work led by organisations like Size of Wales that has highlighted both the scale of Wales's overseas impact as well as the opportunity we have to do things differently. Becoming deforestation free means that public bodies actively identify, reduce, and ultimately eliminate links to deforestation in their procurement and investment decisions. It means greater transparency in supply chains. It means working with suppliers to improve standards. And crucially, it means recognizing that our duty to future generations doesn't stop at our borders. This is fundamentally about putting the well-being of future generations into action, especially the goal of a globally responsible Wales, which is one of the goals we consistently see as being underrepresented in the well-being objectives of public bodies. We're often strong on local action, and rightly so, but weaker when it comes to understanding and acting on our global impacts. Taking action to become deforestation free is a powerful way to change that. This provides a tangible, measurable way for public bodies to contribute to a globally responsible Wales, reducing harm, supporting sustainable production, and aligning spending with our values. And this agenda is reinforced by newer legislation, particularly the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Wales Act, which puts a clear expectation on public bodies to consider social, environmental, cultural, and economic outcomes in procurement and to work in partnership to deliver them. A deforestation-free approach sits squarely within that ambition. It is about using public spending, billions of pounds each year, as a lever for positive global change while strengthening ethical and transparent supply chains. My office is committed to leading by example. We're currently on our own journey to become a deforestation-free champion. We have started with understanding our footprint and building awareness across our team. And we're grateful to Size of Wales and to Angie and Scout for their help with that. We're now reviewing our policies and identifying our opportunities to make change. Size have encouraged us to consider how we are best placed to make change. And for us, that is using our influence to encourage others across the public sector to do the same. And that's why today's event and this toolkit is so important, because while the ambition is clear, the how can often feel challenging. This toolkit helps turn ambition into action. It offers practical steps, guidance, and tools that organizations can use no matter where they are on their journey. It recognizes that this is not about perfection from day one, it's about progress, collaboration, and continuous improvement. We know that Wales has a proud history of global solidarity, from our nation of sanctuary commitment to our support to international development and fair trade. Becoming deforestation free is the next chapter in that story. a chapter where we take responsibility not just for what happens within our borders, but for the impact of our choices around the world. So my message today is we have the ambition, we have the legislation, we have the evidence, and we now have the tools. What we need is collective action, and I encourage all public bodies and partners across sectors to engage with this toolkit, to start or accelerate their journey and to work together towards that shared goal of a deforestation-free Wales by 2028. Because the decisions we make today, what we buy, who we buy from, and the standards we set will shape the world that future generations inherit. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.
Thank you.
Borough, and thank you for inviting me to say a few words today.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for the team for those inspiring words. And it leads on really nicely now because Derek called us all to take action. It's not just words now and policies. And I'm so pleased to invite Hazel Clatworthy, who's the Sustainability Policy Officer for Monmouthshire County Council. As we said already, Monmouthshire was the first council to really lead this work and to become the first deforestation-free champion in Wales. Hazel has been a real strong supporter of everything to do with sustainability, fair trade, global responsibility, and has championed this work. And we just are so excited to hear about what they did, how they did it, the successes and challenges of this approach. Thank you, Hazel, for joining us.
Thank you. Just checking, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for having me. So yeah, my job is Sustainability Policy Officer. So I kind of coordinate sustainability policy across the council. So I'm not a procurement officer. I think Reese, who is our procurement officer, he is on the call. Procurement is not my background, but my background is, you know, doing what I can and collaborating across the organisation to drive forward all different aspects of sustainability. And it is a journey. We are now deforestation-free champions, but that doesn't by any means mean we've got it all in the bag and all sorted and done. It's still a journey and there's still more that we need to be doing. But just to give a bit of background to where it all started, we were fortunate enough to be the beneficiary of some funding that Size of Wales had from Co-op to run a deforestation-free community pilot. And they chose Monmouthshire, which was great for us. And I think it was fertile ground. There was a lot of community backing for what we were doing, backing from schools, which we'll hear about, and from the council as well. So Size of Wales started working at Osbaston Primary School in Monmouth, and that work has expanded to other schools across the county as well. And what they did was they worked with the pupils to help them understand how their school menu could potentially be contributing to tropical deforestation. So there was a big kind of education and awareness raising project with the children to help them make those links. And Size of Wales are brilliant at getting young people to kind of use their voices and use their influence to influence others. And so once those pupils at Osbaston understood how items on their school menu could be contributing to tropical deforestation, they've been an amazing force for change in using those voices. And Lee Waters is in the picture there. He was the Deputy Environment Minister at the time, who heard what the children were doing at a youth COP meeting and asked to come and find out more. And so having learnt how those ingredients in the school meals that they were being served could cause deforestation, they then challenged lots of different groups of people. So, as I've mentioned, the members of the Senedd, they have spoken to Castle Howell suppliers. They've spoken to the community of Monmouth at the Monmouth Climate Festival, the Town Council, the County Council, and more. And they just have such a powerful message. It's been amazing, the influence that those young voices have had at influencing policy at all different levels of government and community. And those original kind of cohort of young people are now in just finished year 8. They've continued using their voices in secondary school contexts, and also kind of supporting and mentoring other primary schools as well. So that original cohort of pupils came to a council meeting back in October 2023 and kind of issued the challenge, really, to the council to become deforestation free. And then following that, we did some work. We put together an action plan, and the pupils returned in December 2024. And at that council meeting, the unanimous decision, has been said already, was made to become deforestation free champions. They had a standing ovation, and that is not something that happens very often in the council chamber. I'm sure anyone in the local authority can attest to that. But the message they gave was so compelling. So that was kind of the point where we became deforestation free champions. But what I like about the deforestation free champion model is, it's not, you don't really get to a point where you say, yeah, I've done it, tick, that's it. There's always more to do. It's a kind of flexible program, and we've been able to think about what works for us as a local authority. So we now got an action plan, which we update quarterly. We meet with Size of Wales every quarter just to go through progress. And we have actions against these different themes, which you heard a little bit about earlier. So just to give a flavour of some of the work that has happened, a lot of work went on with our catering team to understand more about the ingredients, and the children worked with Size of Wales and with the Cook Along Club to develop their own recipe for a chickpea korma. So it takes out the forest deforestation risk that could come from soy being fed to chickens. And that was put on the school menu. The catering team, the school meals teams, have been working to look at other deforestation-free recipes. They now have a Mexican bean quesadilla on the menu, and are looking to develop more meat-free options, which reduce that animal feed deforestation-free risk. Other things were relatively easy switches. So any cocoa products were switched to fair trade. That was quite a quick and easy switch. So there's kind of an ongoing process, really, of looking at the school menus and making sure that the deforestation risk is removed, or at least reduced as much as possible. All our beef was British, so that reduced the tropical deforestation risk from the actual of the beef coming from the tropical forest areas, although not necessarily the animal feed part of it. So conversations are underway with Castle Howell about products such as corned beef. Size of Wales tells us that Wales eats more corned beef than any other part of the UK. We don't actually have it on the school menu, but there is a small amount consumed through residential homes. So we've been looking at options around that and trying to have conversations about that. Fair trade, we already had before we started working with Size of Wales, very active fair trade movement in Monmouthshire for fair trade town groups. We're a fair trade county and do quite a lot around that. So we've looked at building fair trade into kind of procurement opportunities as they have come along. So, for example, the warm hubs that we have funding from Welsh Government to support through the winter, we made the decision that all the tea and coffee that we supply to the warm hubs would be fair trade. And then we're just starting to explore non-food commodities like cleaning products. We haven't got far in terms of that, but that's an area that we're looking to find out more about. Another aspect that's really important in Monmouthshire is promoting local food. Local food obviously massively reduces the risk of tropical deforestation. So our food team have been working on Welsh veg in schools, doing a lot of work with school children, helping them to understand where food comes from, experimenting and growing their own food. And also we've done some work mentoring some local farmers in regenerative agriculture, and some of that has involved using non-soy animal feed alternatives. Also things like looking at the potential for growing our own soy, and this, or not, maybe not soy, but our own chickpeas and things like that, and legumes and pulses and things, and exploring the opportunities there. Fair trade, I've mentioned. We do a lot of work in schools and in the wider community. Only yesterday, in fact, I was in Osbaston with some pupils going around the shops. They had done an audit of what fair trade you could buy where in the county, and we were going around with the pupils awarding special posters to go in their windows, which the children had designed, saying you can buy fair trade here. So that was quite a nice project. And increasingly, we've kind of tailored the fair trade work we've been doing to include the deforestation free message. Previously, the emphasis, has historically been more on fair wages for workers, and rightfully so. But perhaps people are less aware that if they buy coffee or cocoa with the with the fair trade logo on, that logo guarantees that there's been no tropical deforestation. So we've been including that in our kind of messaging around fair trade to help people realise that it's not just good for people, it's good for the planet as well. And then an exciting highlight was last November when the pupils from Monmouthshire actually spoke at COP30 in Brazil. That was just an amazing opportunity. And it's just incredible, really, how work at such a local level has reached a global stage. So we're really excited for what next. We continue to work with the young people, and they continue to very much be a strong voice in Monmouthshire and helping shape what we do next. So yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Hazel. And it's so impressive to see all that action taken in such a short space of time. And you're really leading the way and pioneering this work. So, and taking the children at the heart of this process, I think, is something that's been so powerful. And as Sue said, hopefully all of this data will appear in your annual reports that you have to produce as a council. So it'll be really exciting to see that, and hopefully an inspiration for other councils and public bodies wanting to follow in your footsteps. And they are following in your footsteps. We have a fabulous team from Caerphilly who have just done a huge amount of work, and particularly in the last 6 months, to become the second deforestation-free champion council. I'm going to hand over to Hayley Jones, Shelley Toms, Heather Richardson, and Kate Davis, who can all share what the work they've been doing and how they've made Caerphilly the second deforestation-free champion in Wales and possibly the world.
Sorry, Heather's connection has just dropped off, so she's just reconnecting. It won't be a second.
Hi all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, fantastic. Sorry about that. We've had some technical difficulties our end. So my name's Hayley Jones. We're from Caerphilly, and we're here to talk to you about the deforestation-free public sector and the journey that we built Size of Wales as a collaboration from procurement to a charter commitment. So today we've got a number of us presenting. Like I said, my name's Hayley Jones. I'm the Supplier Relationship Officer. I sit within procurement, so I support our suppliers through the procurement process, right the way through to social value delivery. And I've been on this journey to support our suppliers and internal staff. We've got Shelley Toms from our catering team, who's an operational supervisor, Kate Davis, a healthy food trainer within Caerphilly Catering, and Heather Richardson, our decarb project officer. So we've worked together with Size of Wales from the procurement, was mentioned earlier by Angie. We administer a food framework for 22 public sector bodies. An ethical sourcing criteria was built into the food framework from the start, and that is used across Wales. We also worked in collaboration with Size of Wales to set up some training sessions for our suppliers on the framework and for our participants. So there was a number of sessions that took place at the council offices where they were invited into the offices to explore their supply chains and really go in depth on that. This then led to us working with Wernfawr Primary School, which is one of our local primary schools, to allow the pupils to explore their menus. They explored the supply chains and the deforestation risks, identifying how everyday food choices connect the forest risk commodities. And then that took them to our food festival. So the pupils shared their learning and the lower risk menu that they created during their sessions with visitors of the Caerphilly Food Festival. They made alongside and Harrod, the Cook Along Club, and even our councillors came along the dish along with many residents. I think it was one of the most visited stands. The pupils actually created a noodle pot that was low deforestation risk free. Slide. So that built a clear pathway from awareness to the council commitment. So the pupils, the members, and all partners that were involved came together for a members' seminar. And the members' seminar was held at Caerphilly County Borough Council, and the children came in and took the members back to school and taught them everything that they had learnt through their sessions on deforestation risks and exploring the choices that can be hidden inside the foods and the tropical impacts and how better sourcing can reduce the risk. Following on from this session, the pupils' voice reached the council, and we actually took this to a full council meeting with three pupils stood in front of full council to discuss the choices of climate change, the nature and global responsibility, bringing the charter decision to the decision makers. And it was formally, it was unanimously made as a commitment in front of the full council, and we have now signed the deforestation-free charter, formalising the responsible sourcing commitment. So the charter principles are learn to understand forest consumption-driven deforestation and solutions. Reflection, so review the council practices to identify where change is possible. Audit, identify forest risk products and services, including catering and cleaning. Act, practical changes through ethical sourcing, waste reduction and fair trade practice. Collaboration, so work with schools, suppliers, partners and communities. And inspire, so share our learning. So the young people shared their learning and turned it into charter principles, and it was visible, practical, and it induced change. So far, we've had learning that's been delivered. As I said earlier on, we've along with Size of Wales, delivered learning with our suppliers, and that is going to continue. And along with the participants of our framework, really leading the way on this and trying to bring more public sector bodies on board. We ensured that when we delivered the learning, it was supported by procurement staff, pupils, suppliers, and Castle Howell have been come along the journey with us as well. We wanted community engagement. So the workshops, by taking it to the food festival, made the deforestation-free choices visible and practical and made the community aware of what the young people were driving. The pupil voice and decision makers. So the pupils helped bring the issue to the members through learning, discussion, and showing them and even had a demonstration of the lower risk dish. And this then turned to a full charter commitment. So that was evidence of our progress with learning with Wern Fawr. The next stage now is that we will go to our catering team who will talk through the steps that they took on the back of this, including putting this dish into our schools.
Sorry.
Hayley, is there any way to put the presentation into full mode? Because we can just see half of it rather than we can see the next slide. Is it possible just to put it into full screen?
It's showing us full screen for us. Can you see the whole of the slide?
We can just see the second slide as well. Don't worry if it's tricky, just keep it as it is. We can see both this slide and the next slide.
I'll carry on then. So my name's Shelley and I work as part of the menu team in Caerphilly. I've had the pleasure of working with all the team from Size of Wales, Procurement and Waynfawr Primary School. So where catering will go from this is we need to make smarter menu choices. So we're currently working on our new menus that are going to hopefully meet the new guidelines coming out the end of October 26. So we're looking to work with lots of Welsh suppliers because we support Welsh suppliers as well, to swap ingredients or recipes where possible towards deforestation-free choices. So we've already started asking lots of questions to Castle Howell and other suppliers that we use. And we're working with a panel of head teachers, counsellors and school cooks in creating the menus that will suit all. We obviously check our supplier stock and the product specs. So we're looking at them very closely and where things are coming from, what animals are being fed. So I think we're driving Castle Howell nuts because we're asking many questions. We also need to support kitchens. We need to make recipes very familiar and clear explanations why we're making these changes and not add to the workload, because we don't want to create more work. We want to work to make it easier for everybody while we achieve all these targets. We want to be clear with communication. So part of what we're looking to do in Caerphilly is work with cabinet members, the Director of Education, to roll out Size of Wales and deforestation as part of the curriculum in schools. So it'll be spread wide. We'll use parents' evenings. We've got healthy food trainers who will deliver this as part of their presentation in schools to children and parents. It'll become part of our newsletters that we send out monthly to schools. And the menu page on the Caerphilly website will also refer to Size of Wales and what Caerphilly Catering are doing. So I'm going to pass you over to Kate now.
Hello, so my name is Kate Davis and I'm a healthy food trainer. And as part of my role is to continue the success that's already been done in Waynfawr. So one of the things that my role will cover is, as we are going back now to more scratch cooking, so we'll have better control over the ingredients that we're using. As part of my role, then I'll go in and support cooks and offer them training. We'll get like cluster groups together on a termly basis, and we'll have them all in and show them different dishes and how best, to get the best out of the ingredients that we're using. As part of the menu side of it, then I'll be supporting Shelley, making sure that we work closely with procurement to get the best ingredients to put into our recipes. We'll work then with suppliers and get them to come in then as well and do demonstrations with our cooks, and showing them how to best use the ingredients. We'll be using a lot more beans and pulses in recipes to obviously make sure that we get in safe forms of protein into our recipes. And with getting our communities to understand them, we'll carry out workshops and in schools and attend parents' evenings, to spread the message then about sustainability and also about the nutrition guidelines that we need to meet as well. We'll work at parents' evenings and have pop-up events, not only in primary schools, but also in our comprehensive schools as well, to further support our communities. Next slide, girls. Has it gone through? So can you see the next slide with the picture of the noodle dish on? Has it come through?
Yes, it has.
Sorry. Okay, so on the back of the work that we did in Wayn Fawr, so we was challenged then to come up with a dish that we could have permanently on our school menu. So we came up with a recipe, which is a noodle-based dish and is as close as we could possibly get to the one they did in Wayn Fawr. So it's got the noodles, all the different types of beans and everything in there. But what we needed from our point of view was, in order to be able to produce that en masse, because some of our schools are serving like 300 pupils a day. So we needed something that was going to sort of slot into the working day quite easily as well for our cooks. So this is the dish that we came up with. There's a couple of different types of beans. You've got edamame beans, butter beans, we've got the tofu in there, lots of different vegetables as well. And that is served with a broth then, which is the base of the broth is a yellow Thai paste, which is made by a Welsh company based up in Conwy in North Wales called Coconut Kitchen. So we're keeping obviously the food miles down then as well, using a Welsh product. So this is going on our menu permanently when the menu changes, which at the end of the year. But we are doing a theme day at the end of September to celebrate the success of the project that was done in Wayn Fawr, and that'll be across the board then in our primary and comprehensive schools. So it'll be a really good opportunity for everyone to taste the dish before it goes on the menu full, and also to celebrate all the hard work that's been done. Okay.
And if I could just finish it off there to say, working together, small menu changes will make a big difference to the rainforest.
Thanks. Well, sorry for the connection issues that we're experiencing. Obviously, we'll of course share the slides with everyone afterwards, so you can finally join up what we're saying with what you should have been seeing on the screen. So to apologise for that. So I work in the decarbonisation team here at Caerphilly, so similar to what Hazel does in Monmouthshire. And we've made some really good progress in the work with catering, and obviously now looking to move beyond that as an organisation and see where kind of that risk exists across other commodities within our supply chains. As a local authority, we spend hundreds of millions of pounds a year, so it's inevitable that there will be some risk in there. So looking forward in terms of our deforestation-free action planning, so the next step after signing the charter, we're looking at bringing together a multidisciplinary team from across the council so we can coordinate development of the action plan, really collaborate across service areas, ensure that everyone understands, like we do with safeguarding, like we do with other elements of climate change. This is everyone's responsibility. We've signed up to this, and it's not just for procurement lead or catering or decarb, it's for every service area across the council. So we want everyone involved so they can understand deforestation, where we might be at risk, and what actions that we can take to reduce that impact. We're doing this to ensure that we've got a unified approach and we can move towards a deforestation-free conscious culture. So it's embedding that culture change all throughout the organisation as well. Also through this, we're looking to work with our partners across the public sector. We've already had conversations with Hazel about things that we might be able to do together. And actually, even just being in this session today, I've already been inspired about some of the changes and some of the things that I know that we need to look at in terms of what we have as an organisation. Most people in the council don't know that we actually have cows. So I've written down a note to say, what do our cows eat? Because I actually don't know. So part of that and the kind of actions that we're looking at, obviously, is supply chain audits. So as I said, we spend £320 million each year. We need to understand where that risk is and we need to address it. We can do that through things that we're already looking to implement, such as sustainable risk assessments, but also then utilising the toolkit that's been presented today and building that into our processes. So how can we ensure that not just what we've already been buying and contracts that already exist, but now looking forward into our new contracts. So as you're looking for new procurement, what are you doing to understand where you can minimize that risk? How can you then build that into your specifications, etc., moving forward? So very early stages, but yeah, there's something that we're looking to implement as we move forward. And then the key thing that links into my first point is awareness raising and training. So we already do kind of carbon literacy, we already do other kind of general awareness raising, but we can really start to drive home deforestation as well and those risks that exist. We're looking at developing in-house e-learning modules that can be shared on the Thinky platform. Our view is that we would make these publicly available on Thinky. So anyone that is signed up to the Thinky platform, you'll be able to have those within your catalogue. And also making sure that we're communicating our journey publicly and internally. So not just us for our staff and the council, but also shouting about it loud and proud in our communities and across Wales to say this is what we're doing and we think you should be doing it too. Like I say, small changes make a big difference. But if we're all making those small changes, then we can make an even bigger difference. And that's what we're looking to do with our action plan. And with that, we're done. So thank you everyone for having us on today. And yeah, again, apologies for our technical difficulties.
Heather, that was, and all the team, just blown away by the work you're doing. And in such a short space of time, you've literally galloped through this work. So a big shout out to everyone that is so committed to this work, and to see such change in such a short space of time is phenomenal. And I'm sure everyone on this call from your work and Monmouthshire is going to come up with lots of ideas. Scout's briefly going to introduce the next speaker and the work with that Amy Roach is doing at Greener by Default.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. Just as you can see, Amy's started sharing a screen, but I just wanted to introduce sort of why we have Amy here today. So one of the case studies that we included in the toolkit was a little bit further afield than we've heard so far. So it was the NYC Health Plus Hospitals Plant-Based by Default program, which was supported by Greener by Default, their USA team. So the program in 11 New York City hospitals made plant-based meals the chef's recommendation or the default option for patients. They were fully free to choose different options, but this program was really successfully received and well received by patients. And there's some really great stats about how that program was delivered in the toolkit. It represents a really successful model for sort of increasing plant-based food in healthcare settings, which we know can have lots of benefits aside from reducing deforestation risk associated with animal products. It also delivers benefits for emissions reductions, health benefits, importantly in a healthcare setting, but also cost savings. So yeah, that's why we included it in the toolkit. Amy is from the UK team of Greener by Default, who's an international consultancy working to make plant-based the default option and more accessible and appealing to people. And she's going to talk a little bit about the work she does in the UK, so hopefully a little bit more applicable to everyone here today. So thanks. And Amy, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much for that, Scout. I'm aware of the time, so I'll try and breeze through this as best I can. But yeah, I've obviously sort of come from a slightly different background from everyone else here. And actually, yeah, I'd just really like to say what fantastic examples have just come before me, like incredible. I absolutely love how you've used like the voice of children and to raise awareness and get change. I think it's really beautiful. Well done. I'm a dietitian by background, by the way, but yes, I'm the UK healthcare manager for Greener by Default. In interest of time, I won't go into too much detail as Scout's just said who we are, but yeah, our mission basically is to put more plants on menus, basically. And in the UK specifically, we work as part of a coalition. So there's 5 founding organisations. You can see us all on there. And we work together to achieve basically the same mission as Greener by Default, putting more plants across menus. But specifically, this is in healthcare in the UK, whereas Greener by Default does work across other institutions internationally. So why do we have this focus on sort of plant-based foods and making menus more plant-rich? And sort of Scout did sort of allude to some already, really, but there are multiple. So on screen, you can see the ones here. So it's better for planetary health. We know that plant-based meals have around half the carbon footprint of an animal-based meal. You know, they use less resources like water and land. So then if we're thinking about the purpose of this webinar, you've got a reduction in deforestation there. We also know that eating more plants is better for human health. So plant-based dietary patterns, they consistently sort of demonstrate health promoting effects, such as like reductions in key indicators that are known to correlate with disease, like reductions in blood pressure and cholesterol, for example.
And these these sort of factors, they all fall really nicely in line with the NHS 10-year plan, which reinforces the target to achieve a carbon net zero health service. And it also involves like a move towards a more preventative health approach, which is really important. Other benefits not on this screen are like improving inclusivity. So we like plant-based meals. If you've got more plant-based meals on your menu, then that can allow more people to be able to select from a menu. So, you know, people like, for example, with religious beliefs or ethical values, or even certain allergies and intolerances, they can pick more from the menu, which is really great. Typically, plants are also cheaper than animal foods as well. And so what this means is like for hospitals and healthcare settings, and you know, this could be applicable across different sectors as well, but putting more plants on menus, you know, can help you to achieve your carbon commitment targets, equality, diversity and inclusion goals. It aligns with staff wellbeing values, aims to enhance, you know, in our case, the patient experience, but that, you know, any service user experience. And it's at least cost neutral with the potential for cost savings. Our work specifically is grounded in the nudge theory. So this is a behavioural science concept around how decisions are influenced by changing how choices are presented. So Richard Fowler and Cass Sunstein, in this book Nudge that you see on screen, they basically examine like the profound impacts that defaults and nudges have on human behaviour. And by default, we mean that option that people tend to end up with if they don't make an active choice. For example, like I fully admit that I've not changed the factory default setting that my phone came with, like the ringtone, for example. You know, I've never bothered to go in and change it. I've just accepted that as the default. You know, perhaps many of you are the same. And Thaler and Sunstein, they explain that people tend to stick with the default option or the status quo. One, you know, because it's one less decision to make, but also partly because defaults are seen as more socially acceptable. And we have sort of this subconscious assumption that if most people are doing something, then it must be the right thing to do. And defaults and nudges, like they're used all around us in our everyday lives, like from something as simple as how supermarkets set up their displays to influence what we buy. So it's nothing new, but what we can do is we can use the power of the nudge to like benefit human and planetary health, you know, rather than profit, which is so often where we see these strategies used. It's a really great strategy because choice is preserved, because you know people can still pick the option that they might usually go for, but we can positively like guide their decision towards, in our case, the plant-based example, the plant-based option. In terms of like opportunity for impact, you know, the goal here is not to make everybody vegetarian or vegan, but to get everybody eating more plants, basically. You know, if you think about people's food preference, like you see this bell curve here, you've got the two extremes on either side, and these two groups of people are highly unlikely to ever change the way they eat. But you can see that the majority of people actually fall into this middle category of flexitarians, and these people would eat in either direction, you know, depending on what they feel like, or what the default is, like what options are available to them. And this is really where the work, our work, like the focus of it lies, in activating flexitarians. So we work to make the plant-based options like more accessible and more appealing, so that they're more likely to be selected by flexitarians. So as mentioned, it's like a behavioural science sort of grounding that we work in, and there are like numerous different strategies that we can employ. Our top ones are shown on the screen. So to give you an example, like the one you see there called Tasty Titles, like this strategy looks at like the wording that's used for like the title or the description of the dish, and it changes like that wording to have a focus on things like the taste or the texture or the provenance of the dish, rather than like calling out if the dish is vegetarian or vegan. And this is because, like, to many people, those sorts of terms, vegan, meatless, like they signify that something's going to be less tasty or less filling. So what instead this strategy does is it focuses on like what is in the dish, and it's that increases the likelihood of selection. So if you've got a dish on your menu and you call it a celiac bowl, probably only people with celiac disease or a gluten intolerance are going to select it, right? But if you change the name to be a Thai peanut rice noodle bowl, then like boom, you've got like a popular dish. Like no one considers the fact that it's gluten-free. They just want to eat it because it sounds good. So it's the same principle for veggie and vegan dishes. We typically work by like helping hospitals to run a pilot testing different strategies, because then they can see like the benefits for themselves, and then they can choose at the end of the pilot to implement which changes they want to. And that's really empowering. Our pilots, like, they're very much tailored to each respective site. So what pilot looks like at one site might not be the same for another. So to just sort of bearing that in mind, I wanted to sort of quickly finish with a couple of UK examples. The example that's in the toolkit that Scout spoke about is the New York City Health and Hospitals example. So I'm not going to go through that one, that's in there, but obviously happy to answer any questions if that comes up. So the first example is the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital in Stanmore. So this was in conjunction with their food service management company, ISS. And they wanted to pilot tasty titles, which I just explained, alongside climate-friendly ratios, which looks at like the number of plant-based options to animal-based options that are on offer. So their pilot was in their staff canteen over the summer of 24. And during their pilot, what they did was they almost doubled their ratios of plant-based meals. So at baseline, they had about 25% plant-based meals on offer. And during the pilot, that bumped up to almost 50%. And they also looked at like the wording, obviously removing terms like vegan and meatless. So during their 12-week pilot, they shifted around 3,000 meals from animal-based to plant-based, which reduced their food-related greenhouse gas emissions by about an average of 33% per meal per person, which reduced their that reduced their greenhouse gas emissions by 40%. Just to, obviously, we want to make sure that satisfaction doesn't drop as a result of this. So that was monitored throughout. And staff satisfaction remained high. And actually, staff even began to share like different plant-based recipes on their staff webpage, which is really fantastic, like the development of that positive culture. And then lastly was a case study at Nuffield Health, and this was in partnership with their food service management company, Sodexo. So they basically developed like a plant-forward menu for their patient dining, this one. So it tested the ratios and the titles, and then also looked at like menu layout. This was a huge pilot actually, because it, rather than just like testing at one site, they tested across all 37 of their UK sites at once, and not just at one meal sitting, but across all 3 meal sittings at the same time. And to our knowledge, that was and still is the biggest sort of pilot of its kind in the UK. So as a result of their pilot, the average meat per meal per person like reduced by 14%. And this reduced their food-related greenhouse gas emissions 22%, which was the equivalent of driving like a huge value. It was over 100,000 miles saved, which is fantastic. Their satisfaction was also maintained really high, above 90%. And Nuffield and Sodexo, as a result of like their pilot, and this was also the same for RNOH, I can't remember if I said that or not, but they've implemented their changes permanently as a result of doing the pilot. And Nuffield and Sodexo are sort of very much continuing along their journey with the aim of progressing their learnings from the pilot, and you know, pushing the dial as far as they can, really, as far as like the satisfaction allows them to go. So that was a whistle-stop tour of like what we do. And obviously I don't sort of directly deal with procurement, but sort of the strategies that we employ and putting more plants on menus, that sort of is going to affect like the procurement side of things as well. So thank you for putting up with me and speaking really rapidly. Happy to take any questions. I think we're going to go to questions more widely now anyway, so I'll stop sharing. My details are obviously on screen there and I can put them in the chat. If anyone has any questions later, I can just wait to stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you so much, Amy. And that's really interesting work. And I love the kind of nudge concept. And we work with the same logic. It's not about making everyone become vegetarian, but eating less but better quality meat and more plant-based proteins. And I think that was a question that someone asked about cost. And we found that, you know, where you make those changes, so you could have more plant-based like bean dishes on the menu, which can be cheaper, and therefore you can buy better quality meat, which might be organic. I know that Carmarthenshire are doing that with their getting organic beef for their spaghetti bolognese, but adding in lentils to the dish. And I know that Caerphilly are also looking at that as well. So we have had some questions that have been answered in the chat. Do we have any other question? I know we're just up on time. So there was one last question before we bring to close. Any more questions? No? Well, I think it has just been the most inspiring session, and to hear from something that can be very theoretical, can be really, you know, a toolkit, but really to see it come alive in such fantastic examples of local-led action. And our aim is that all councils in Wales adopt this approach, because it really is a win-win for all councils. I think it improves people's health, it can reduce costs, it can increase and improve connections with local supply chains, it can make sure that we are ethical procurers, not just in an environmental sense, but also in a human rights and fair work sense through the things like fair trade as well. So this approach is a real win-win for councils, and involving young people who are so passionate about the food that they eat and are our future leaders and will inherit the planet that we are kind of leaving behind. So I think it's a really important way of working. We run education sessions across Wales. We have a policy team that is very happy to support all public bodies across Wales. And thanks to the funding that we get from SIPs and other donors. So please do get in touch with us. I've added in our email addresses. We will be sending out an email with the toolkit, with a PDF of all the presentations, with a recording of the webinar and links that Sue helpfully put in to navigate the long list of annexes to the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Act. So hopefully those will be really good resources, and we're here to help. And I know that RAP also put in comments about their support for this work as well. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you so much for everyone's fantastic participation. And I hope as the heat kind of prevails that we all now know that we can make a difference, and that all these little changes will be helping protect tropical forests, our cooling system for the planet. And I hope you have a cooler rest of the day. And thank you so much for your input and time and passion. Thank you so much. Diolch yn fawr iawn.